Daniel never planned to get married so young. He was just 22, still in his final year at the university, when he met Ella. She was beautiful, full of life, and studying business administration. They clicked instantly. It was fast and intense. Long phone calls, late-night talks, dreams of a future that neither of them truly understood. Then one day, Ella sat across from him, her hands trembling. "I'm pregnant," she said softly. Daniel's heart stopped. He wasn't ready. He didn't even have a job yet. But he couldn't walk away. "I'll take responsibility," he told her. "Just give me time." And he meant it. After graduation, Daniel got a job at a logistics firm in Lagos. It wasn't much, but it paid the bills. He called Ella and said, "Come stay with me. Let's try to build something together." She moved in, heavily pregnant, with hope in her eyes. But from the beginning, Daniel's mother was unhappy. "You're too young for this," she would say. "That girl trapped you." Daniel didn't argue. He knew his mother helped sponsor his education. He owed her. And that guilt lingered in everything he did. Still, he tried to balance both worlds, being a son, a brother, and now a father-to-be. It wasn't easy. The baby came, a beautiful girl they named Nia. Life got harder. Bills piled up. Daniel was now responsible not just for Ella and the baby, but also for his mother and two younger siblings. "Remember who sent you to school," his mother often reminded him. He sent money home every month, even when it meant leaving Ella with little. She never complained at first. She believed in him. But then Ella got pregnant again. This time, the weight of it all nearly crushed Daniel. He began shutting down, mentally, emotionally, financially. Some nights he would just sit in the dark, unable to speak. Ella noticed. She would sit at the edge of the bed, quietly watching him. "Talk to me," she said one night. "I'm tired too, Daniel, but I'm here." He nodded but said nothing. Deep down he felt like a failure. The pressure to provide, to succeed, to be everything to everyone, it was too much. He started missing work. He came home late. The money got tighter. Sometimes he didn't even give Ella enough for food. "It's not that I don't care," he once said, frustrated. I can't breathe." But the damage was already being done. Ella started withdrawing, her laughter fading, her touch distant. The silence between them grew. Nights became cold. Conversations turned into passing glances. Daniel felt rejected. And instead of fixing it, he made the worst mistake of his life. He started cheating. "It was never about love," he would later admit. "It was escape." One of the women got pregnant, and not just with one child. She gave birth to triplets. When Ella found out, she packed her bags without a word. Daniel followed her to the door, tears in his eyes. "Please don't go." She turned, her voice calm but sharp. "As I'm going with my blessing. You'll never know peace." Then she walked away. Daniel stood at the doorway long after Ella left, clutching her last words like a curse. "You'll never know peace." It echoed in his ears for weeks, then months. He tried to move on. He focused on work, paid for the triplets' care, and sent money home as usual. But nothing ever felt right again. Deals would collapse at the last minute. His promotion was delayed twice. He'd wake up every night drenched in sweat, haunted by dreams of Ella's face, angry, hurt, and distant. He tried reaching out. Calls, texts, mutual friends. She blocked everything. The silence was louder than any scream. His mother, Mrs. Okoro, acted as if nothing had happened. "She never deserved you," she said one evening while picking stones out of beans. "That girl was always too proud." Daniel didn't respond. His younger sister Ruth also played her part back then. Sly remarks, cold stares, making Ella feel like an outsider in her own home. Daniel remembered one moment clearly. Ella had just given birth to their second child when Ruth said, "You're still here? Haven't you milked my brother enough?" He had overheard it, and said nothing. That memory gnawed at him now more than anything else. One day, Daniel took a long walk to the park where he and Ella used to sit in their early days. It was quiet there. Children ran around and couples held hands. He sat on the same bench and whispered to himself, "I failed you, Ella. I failed us." The guilt was heavier than ever. He remembered how she used to smile with her whole face, how she would make peanut soup on Sundays, singing off-key while stirring the pot. Those little things now felt like treasures he never valued. His phone buzzed. Another rejection email from a client. Nothing works anymore, he thought. He eventually met someone who reminded him of Ella, not in looks but in kindness. Her name was Chioma. They dated for a few months. She was patient, understanding, and even helped with the triplets on weekends. But Daniel couldn't commit. Every time he looked at her, he saw Ella's shadow. "You're not ready," Chioma finally told him one evening. "Your heart is stuck in the past." Daniel nodded. She wasn't wrong. He was still living in the ruins of his mistakes. He still remembered the softness of Ella's hands, the way she held their babies as if they were made of stars. Desperate for closure, Daniel sent a message through Ella's cousin, who agreed to speak to her. The cousin returned with a short reply. "She said there's nothing to talk about. She's doing fine. She wishes you peace, but she won't look back." Daniel read the message again and again. "She wishes me peace, but I have none." He began avoiding mirrors. Every time he looked into his own eyes, he saw the man who broke everything he loved. The man who let his mother and sister destroy his home. The man who didn't fight hard enough when it truly mattered. He decided to write her a letter. Not to beg, not to plead, but just to speak. He poured everything into it. His regrets, his pain, his apologies. He didn't even send it. He folded the letter and kept it in his drawer, under a stack of unpaid bills. But writing it gave him something. A moment of honesty. "I ruined us," he wrote. "And I will carry that for the rest of my life. I just pray that you found happiness somewhere, with someone who sees you the way I never did." He folded the letter carefully, like something sacred. Ella, on the other side of the city, was doing better. She had found work as a school secretary. She enrolled in weekend classes and was raising their 2 children quietly, with grace. She never spoke badly about Daniel. When the kids asked questions, she simply said, "Daddy is busy." But at night, she would sit by the window and sometimes wonder how things had gone so wrong. She loved Daniel once, deeply. But she knew now that love without respect and loyalty wasn't enough. She had left with her dignity. And she had promised herself never to look back. Meanwhile, Daniel's business kept falling apart. Clients stopped renewing contracts. One of the triplets fell ill, and medical bills stacked up. His car broke down and his rent was due. One evening he knelt by his bedside sobbing, "God, I know I did wrong. I lost her. I lost everything. But please, just give me peace." He cried into his palms, a grown man unraveling. He realized then that his biggest loss wasn't the money or the comfort. It was Ella. Not just the woman, but the life they could have had together if he had been brave enough to fight for it. One Sunday Ruth came to visit. She looked around the sparsely furnished apartment and sighed. "You're not the same anymore," she said. Daniel didn't smile. "I know." She hesitated, then added, "Do you ever think about her?" Daniel laughed bitterly. "Every day." Ruth sat in silence, regret starting to creep into her voice. "We were wrong. Mama and I. We should have done better." Daniel looked at her with tired eyes. "It's not just what you did. It's what I didn't do. I didn't protect her. I let you all disrespect the mother of my children, and I stayed silent." He had stopped chasing women. Stopped partying. Life had humbled him. People noticed the change. Some thought he was going through a spiritual transformation. Others said it was depression. But Daniel knew what it was. It was loss. The kind that doesn't heal with time. One evening, he ran into one of Ella's old friends at a supermarket. "How is she?" he asked, almost in a whisper. The friend hesitated, then smiled. She's glowing. Doing great. She has her own place now. The kids are happy. Daniel nodded, his heart aching and swelling at once. At least she's okay, he thought. Daniel started journaling, something Ella used to do. In one entry he wrote, "Pain teaches you what pride hides. I thought I was the man of the house, but she was the soul. And I drove her away." He wrote every day, reflecting on their past, both the sweet and the bitter parts. He remembered how she used to braid her hair in the living room, humming old gospel songs. How she danced with the baby in her arms. He'd never find that again. Not because there weren't other women, but because he had destroyed the only garden where such love had grown. Every birthday of their first child, Nia, he'd send a gift. Books, dresses, a card. Ella never returned them, but she never acknowledged them either. Daniel didn't stop. One day, he told himself, she'll know I never stopped caring. But he also understood something now. Love wasn't just about showing up. It was about being present when it mattered most. And he hadn't been. He remembered how he used to brush Ella off when she tried to talk about their future. How he never took her dreams seriously. "You're just tired," he'd say. "We'll figure it out." But they never did. One late evening, Daniel sat by the window, watching the rain. The streetlights flickered, and thunder rolled gently in the distance. He whispered, "Ella, I miss you." There was no one to hear it, but it gave him a strange peace. He wasn't expecting miracles anymore. He didn't expect her to return. But he hoped, quietly, deeply, that she had forgiven him. Maybe not enough to come back, but enough to release him from the guilt that had weighed down his soul for years. Maybe, just maybe, her blessing could return to him. Even if she never did. He volunteered at a youth center nearby, helping young boys navigate early relationships. He shared his story, anonymously, warning them about pride, neglect, and taking love for granted. "A woman's silence," he told one group, "is louder than her screams. If she stops talking, you're already losing her." The boys listened, some wide-eyed. It didn't change his past, but it gave meaning to his pain. If he could stop just one young man from repeating his mistakes, maybe Ella's suffering hadn't been in vain. But deep inside, Daniel still prayed. He lit candles in church. He fasted on Fridays. He wrote new letters he never sent. One morning, he took all the unsent letters and placed them in a shoebox. He drove to the house where Ella now lived, a quiet street lined with jacaranda trees. He didn't knock. He left the box at the doorstep with a simple note, "For the one I failed but never stopped loving." Then he turned and walked away, unsure if she'd ever read them, but finally able to breathe just a little lighter. Ella found the box late that evening. It was raining lightly, and the children were already asleep. She opened the door to check for a delivery and saw it, an old shoebox with a note stuck on top. The handwriting made her pause. She recognized it instantly. Her heart pounded as she picked it up, staring at the simple words. "For the one I failed but never stopped loving." For a moment she considered tossing it. But something in her wouldn't let her. She placed the box on the kitchen table and sat across from it, unsure if she was ready to open old wounds. She waited 3 days before finally untying the string around the box. Inside were letters, all handwritten, dated over 5 years. The first one was from just a month after she left. "Ella, I don't know how to begin. Every room in this house reminds me of you. I haven't slept in our bed since you left." She read slowly, page by page. Some letters were soaked in regret. Others were apologies so raw they made her cry. There were words she had longed to hear back then, words he never said. Now they came too late. Or maybe, not entirely. She read until dawn. Each letter painted a picture of a man who had fallen apart and was trying to rebuild from the ruins. Ella didn't cry for herself. She cried for the younger version of her who had begged for those words while holding 2 crying babies at night. She had healed in many ways. She had become strong. But the letters cracked something in her, something she thought had long gone cold. She folded the last letter carefully and placed it back in the box, then sat staring at the empty wall for hours. That week, Daniel didn't hear anything. He kept checking his phone. He wasn't expecting much, but part of him hoped. Then on a quiet Thursday morning, he received a message. Just one sentence. "I got your letters." No name. No questions. Just acknowledgement. Daniel read it 10 times before replying. "Thank you for reading them." She didn't reply. But the silence felt different this time. Not angry. Not bitter. Just quiet. Like a door that had remained shut for years had finally cracked open. Just slightly. Days turned into weeks and slowly they began texting. Nothing heavy at first. Just polite check-ins. "How are the kids?" "Fine. They're growing fast." "Do they still like jollof rice?" "Too much." The conversations were careful, like walking on thin ice. But each message carried a softness, a willingness to try. Ella didn't trust him fully. How could she? But she wanted to hear him speak again. Not because she needed him, but because part of her still cared. Not for the man he was, but maybe for the man he was becoming. One Saturday, Daniel asked if he could see the children. Ella hesitated. "They don't really remember you," she typed. He responded, "That's my fault. I'd like to start from wherever they are, even if it's from scratch." She agreed but set boundaries. "You'll meet them in public. No promises. Just a hello." Daniel accepted without argument. The next weekend, they met at a small cafe near the kids' school. He came early, nervous and unsure. When the kids arrived, they looked at him curiously. Ella introduced him simply. "This is your dad." The children were shy at first. Nia, the older one, asked, "Why don't we see you?" Daniel knelt beside her and said, "Because I made a big mistake. But I never stopped thinking about you." She looked at him for a long while before nodding. They spoke for 20 minutes, mostly about school and cartoons. It wasn't much, but for Daniel it was everything. When they left, he whispered to Ella, "Thank you for this." She didn't smile, but she nodded. "They deserve to know you. But this isn't about us. Not yet." Daniel respected every boundary Ella gave. He didn't rush. He showed up for school events, dropped off gifts, sent money for fees without being asked. Slowly, the kids began to warm up to him. One day, Nia called him Dad without hesitation, and he had to step away so they wouldn't see his tears. He knew he had a long road ahead, but this time he was walking it with intention. No shortcuts, no pride. Just a quiet, steady effort to make things right. Not for Ella, but for the children he had once failed. Ella watched him from a distance. She saw the change not just in his actions, but in his posture, his words, his eyes. He no longer spoke with arrogance or excuses. He apologized when he needed to. He didn't push her. Sometimes he would text, "I hope you're okay today," and nothing more. No pressure. No demands. Just presence. It made her feel respected. And slowly, that hardened wall she built around her heart began to soften, though she fought it silently every day. One evening, after a parent-teacher conference, they sat in her car talking. It wasn't planned. The kids had run off to get snacks, leaving them alone for a moment. "You're different now," she said quietly. He nodded. "Life forced me to grow up the hard way." There was a pause. Then she asked, "Why now?" Daniel looked at her, eyes heavy with truth. "Because I lost everything that mattered. And it took losing you to realize I was the problem." She didn't respond. But the silence between them didn't feel cold anymore. Daniel started attending therapy. He didn't tell Ella at first. He just wanted to become better, not just appear better. One day he mentioned it casually. "My therapist said I still carry guilt like a chain." Ella blinked, surprised. "You're in therapy?" He nodded. "Yeah. I needed help letting go. Of shame, regret, even my pride." That small confession moved her. For years, she begged him to open up. And now, here he was, unfolding slowly in front of her, piece by piece. Ella began to reflect more on their past. Not just the pain, but the love that once existed. She remembered their late-night talks in university. His silly jokes, how he held her hand when she gave birth to Nia. She remembered the dreams they once had of opening a small bakery together. "You'd do the baking," she used to tease. "And I'll manage the books." They had been so young, so full of hope. Somewhere along the line, life crushed them. But maybe, just maybe, there was something worth rebuilding. On her birthday, Daniel sent her a single white rose with a card. "I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm asking for your peace. You deserve joy. Always have." She stared at the card for a long time. That night, she placed the rose in a glass jar and set it by her window. It was the first flower she had received in years. And though she didn't say it aloud, she felt something shift in her heart. Something light, something almost like forgiveness. Months passed. They became friends, careful ones. They laughed sometimes, shared school pickups, even had coffee when the kids insisted. Daniel never brought up the past unless she did. He listened more. He never touched her without permission. Ella began to enjoy his presence again. Not romantically, not yet. But as a companion, a co-parent, someone who had finally learned how to be still and supportive. For the first time in years they were parenting together. Not perfectly but honestly. Then one evening, while walking the kids home from a school recital, their younger daughter held both their hands and said, "I like it when you're both here." Ella looked at Daniel and he looked at her. Nothing was said, but in that moment something passed between them. A shared truth. They were no longer the broken young couple who destroyed each other. They were older, wounded, wiser. And maybe, just maybe, healing could live in this space too. That night, Daniel sent her a message. "I know I don't deserve it, but I still love you. I always have." Ella read it and didn't reply. Instead, she stared at the ceiling, tears rolling down her face. It wasn't sadness this time. It was relief. For the first time in years, she realized she didn't hate him anymore. She wasn't sure she could love him again, but the hatred was gone. And that was something. One morning, she invited him in for tea after he dropped the kids. It was quiet, comfortable. They talked about work, about life, and then, without meaning to, they started laughing. Real laughter, the kind they hadn't shared in years. "It feels strange," she said, sipping her tea. "To laugh with you again." He smiled. "I missed this. I missed you." She didn't respond. But she didn't ask him to leave either. Their healing wasn't quick. It wasn't dramatic. It came in small moments. Shared meals, school meetings, quiet conversations about the past. Ella asked hard questions. Daniel answered them without defense. "Yes, I cheated. I was selfish. I blamed you for things you didn't deserve. I let others mistreat you. I failed you." And every time she listened, sometimes in silence, sometimes with tears. But each conversation cleared the fog a little more. One night, while dropping the kids at her place, Daniel lingered at the door. "Can I ask one thing?" he said. She looked at him, cautious. "What?" His voice was low. "Can I take you out? Just once. Not as parents. Just us." Ella stared at him for a long time, then replied, "I don't know, Daniel. I need time." He nodded, smiling gently. "I'll wait. As long as it takes." She watched him walk to his car and drive away. Her heart was beating fast. Not out of fear. Not out of pain. But out of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Quiet, trembling, real hope. For the first time, she wasn't looking back at what they lost. She was looking forward, wondering, what if love isn't about starting over, but learning to begin again with all the scars? Few weeks passed. Ella thought about Daniel's invitation often. It lingered in the quiet moments, when she was folding laundry, cooking dinner, brushing her daughter's hair. It wasn't just about going out. It was about stepping into something uncertain, something that once broke her. Could she trust him again? Would he remain this version of himself if she let him in? She wasn't sure. But she also couldn't ignore the warmth she felt lately, the comfort of his steady presence, the softness in his voice when he said her name. One afternoon she texted him, "Let's have dinner. Just dinner." His reply came seconds later. "Name the time. I'll be there." They agreed on Friday night at a quiet restaurant near the beach. It wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. That evening, Ella stood in front of her mirror, smoothing her simple green dress, heart pounding. She wasn't dressing for romance. She was dressing for closure. Or perhaps a new beginning. When Daniel arrived, he stood as she walked in, a soft smile on his face. "You look peaceful," he said. She smiled faintly. "That's new." Dinner was light, almost nostalgic. They talked about university days, the first time they met, how awkward Daniel was during their first date. "You spilled Zobo on yourself," Ella laughed. "And blamed the waiter." Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "I was so nervous, I nearly fainted." For a moment it felt like old times, before children, before heartbreak, before betrayal. Just two people who once believed the world could be theirs. But the difference now was clear. They had lived through storms and somehow survived. When they walked out of the restaurant, the wind was gentle. The ocean waves rolled quietly behind them. Daniel turned to her. "Thank you for tonight." Ella nodded. "It was good. Familiar." He hesitated, then asked, "Can I hug you?" She thought for a second, then stepped forward. His arms wrapped around her. Not possessive, not desperate, just warm. "I missed this," he whispered. She didn't respond, but she didn't pull away either. And that, for Daniel, was enough. Over the next few months, they didn't label anything. There were no titles, no expectations. Just effort. Daniel kept showing up, helping with homework, attending medical appointments, running errands. He never crossed lines. He let Ella take the lead always. And slowly, trust began to return. Not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. One morning, while packing lunch for the kids, Ella turned to him and said softly, "You've changed." He looked up. "I had to. I couldn't live with myself otherwise." Her friends noticed too. "You seem lighter," one said. "Have you forgiven him?" Ella paused. "I'm not sure I can call it forgiveness yet. But I'm no longer angry. That's something." It was a process. Some days, memories returned. Nights of tears, betrayal, hunger. But now, she didn't carry them with bitterness. She held them as reminders of her strength. She had survived the worst version of love. Now maybe she could experience its healing side. Daniel never pressured her to get back together. He was just present. Every day. Quiet, consistent, reliable. It was new. It was strange. But it was also what she had needed all along. One afternoon, their younger daughter fell sick and needed to stay home from school. Daniel came over immediately, cooked her soup, held her until she fell asleep, then washed the dishes without being asked. Ella stood at the kitchen door, watching him. This was no longer guilt. This was love, finally expressed the right way. Later that night, as they sat on the balcony sipping tea, Ella asked, "Do you ever wish we could go back?" Daniel looked into the distance before replying. "Sometimes. But then I remember how much we needed to grow. Maybe this is better. Not starting over, but starting fresh." She nodded, absorbing the truth in his words. "Fresh sounds nice." He looked at her, eyes full of sincerity. "Whatever you want this to be, I'll follow your lead." That evening, she invited him to stay for dinner. Not just as a guest, but as someone returning to a place he once lost. The children were delighted. "Can Daddy eat with us every day?" Nia asked. Ella smiled. "Let's take one day at a time." After dinner, they watched a movie together on the couch, both kids falling asleep between them. Ella leaned her head slightly on Daniel's shoulder. He froze, then slowly relaxed. That simple gesture meant more than any kiss could. Eventually, Ella began calling him when she felt overwhelmed or tired. Not because she needed help, but because she trusted he'd show up. And he always did. No questions, no attitude. He was building something, brick by brick, with patience and reverence. "Thank you," she said one night after a long conversation, "for not giving up on this." He looked at her gently. "I gave up once. I won't make that mistake again." On the anniversary of their wedding, which had long passed uncelebrated, Daniel sent her a message. "Today used to be a day of regret for me. But now, I see it as the day I began a journey I wasn't ready for. Maybe now, I finally am." Ella didn't reply. But later that night, she sent him a photo of a young plant they'd once tried growing together. She had kept it all these years. It had bloomed. "Some things take time," she captioned it. Their bond became something beautiful, not perfect but real. The kids thrived. Ella laughed more. Daniel stood taller. Friends noticed. Neighbors whispered. Some judged, some applauded. But neither of them lived for people anymore. They had found something bigger than public approval: peace. And that peace had taken years, tears, and countless nights alone to reach. One Sunday, Daniel invited Ella and the kids to his church. It was a quiet service. Afterward, the pastor asked him to say a few words. He stood in front of the small crowd, his voice steady. "I made many mistakes in my life. I lost the woman I loved. But God gave me a second chance, not by erasing the past, but by teaching me how to be better. And I'm still learning." Ella watched from her seat, holding their youngest daughter close, tears in her eyes. Outside the church, he turned to Ella. "I meant every word." She smiled. "I know you did." He reached for her hand, not forcefully, just an offering. She took it. And in that simple act, so much was said. Of forgiveness, of quiet love, of beginning again, not as strangers, not as the same broken couple, but as two people reborn by pain and transformed by choice. They never made a big announcement. There was no grand reunion, no party. They simply kept building, sharing chores, attending school events, laughing again, and facing challenges as a team. Ella once told her best friend, "It wasn't the words that changed him. It was the silence. The space I gave him to grow, and the choice he made not to waste it." They eventually renewed their vows in a small garden with only their children and closest friends present. No white dress. No tuxedo. Just Daniel in a linen shirt and Ella in a blue gown, holding hands under the sun. "I promise," he said, "to never stop listening, to never stop showing up, and to never again take your heart for granted." She smiled, eyes wet. "I promise to forgive daily, to love gently, and to never forget how far we've come." Their children clapped, running to hug them afterward. The sun set slowly behind the trees. There was no fanfare. "Just peace," Ella whispered. "I never thought we'd get here." Daniel replied, "Neither did I. But I'm grateful every single day." They stood there, holding each other, no longer haunted by the past, but guided by the future they were writing, one page at a time. Years later, when their children were grown, they told their story to young couples at marriage seminars. They never painted it as perfect. "We messed up," Daniel would say. "Badly. But grace met us in the wreckage." Ella would add, "Sometimes love doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you're willing to fight for." They grew old together, no longer chasing perfection, just peace. They drank tea in the mornings, danced in the kitchen on rainy days, held hands during walks, and kept every letter Daniel had ever written. The box remained in their bedroom, untouched but never forgotten, a reminder of what was lost, and what was found again. And in the end, when people asked how they survived it all, Ella would smile and say, "We didn't just survive, we chose each other again. Not because we forgot the pain, but because we remembered the love." And Daniel would quietly add, "There is always a way back, if you're willing to become the man who deserves the return."